Awesome. So moving into season 5, which is ridiculously exciting, and we're gonna start this off with the cutie map. Now, the cutie map's pretty interesting. It starts off, pretty bare bones. You got Twilight, and everyone's at the newfound castle, right? So they had this huge new castle. And in the castle, there's like this map, right? So they all kind of have like this throne room, basically, and so there's like 6 seats, and they all just kind of chill out around this cool map. And the map, like, it's sort of like an interactive map, right? So kind of spurts to life, and it points all of them to like this one town in the middle of nowhere. And it tells, like, it shows a picture of all of them there, and it's like, you guys should all go to this town in the middle of nowhere. And so basically that happens a lot now, and so it just starts with the map, right? And so they go to this town, all right? So they go, woo, right? And what's interesting is, like, at the beginning, there's only like 2 rows of houses, which is like ridiculously weird. And everything is just like equal, which is weird. So they get here and they start to walk in and explore, see what's up, see what's going on. And the entire town has the same cutie mark, right? So everybody they all have like equals, right? And they don't have like special talents. I mean, they have like jobs, but like they all have the same cutie mark. And so like it's so weird. So here's where you start to look at like the idea of generalized versus specialized knowledge, skills, and application. And kind of more importantly, this idea that they are all like in this society where everything's the same. And it shows in the quality of their output and their economic power. So since everybody's like in the same bubble and they all have the same skills, same cutie mark, they do the same thing. They still have like jobs, right? So some people work at the bakery, some people work, they don't have a whole lot of jobs, but some they work in different areas, right? And so because everyone's the same, like first of all, like the work that they do and the goods they produce are crap, right? Because to have quality goods and quality products, quality services, you've got to have people that are like hardcore passionate about one specific thing and are in such like if this is all the skills possible, they only focus on like this little tiny sliver right here, and they get ridiculously good at that one thing. So maybe like that's trading stocks, right? You have people that are ridiculously good at trading stocks, and then they don't really care about anything else. What these guys have done is they've basically destroyed that one special thing. So whatever that one special thing is for people, they've gotten rid of it, and they've made it so that everybody's equal, and they're basically just like bland. They try to do everything, which is obviously not the best strategy, right? You can't be a generalist. And so that's sort of the first problem, is that by actually just completely getting rid of special traits, it crushes specialization. Now the second thing is this idea that the entire society is the same. And when the entire society is the same, they all have the same skills, they all have like, smiling, whatever, right? But there's no like individual expression. And so it's like a lot more difficult to, feel happy and positivity, because like everything's the same every single day over. I mean, it's just like, can you imagine, a world where everything's always the same? That's pretty much what these guys find as they go to this new town in the middle of nowhere. It's just like communism, right? And so they all they sing this huge song about our town and our bakery, and everything's ours. Everybody owns everything. It's some pretty sketch political stuff. But kind of more importantly is they do have like a leader, right? They have one dictator. So Starlight, she is like the only one that lives kind of not in like these equal houses. She just kind of lives like at the head of the town. And she's like the leader, right? And so she's the one who like basically said everybody should be equal and everyone should have the same characteristics, same traits. And so she's, the ringleader, right? And she removed everybody's cutie marks and put them all in a vault in a mountain that's kind of near the town, sort of, in a mountain range. And that's sort of where, all of the cutie marks are. And then she shows that to Twilight and her friends. Say, hey, look, this is all our cutie marks. We remove all of them, and we have no special skills, no special traits, no discernible differences in character flaw or in personalities. And so because of that, these guys are like ridiculously confused by the main six and how they are such amazing friends. And they're like, they see them and they're like, what in the world is going on? How can you be friends if you have differences? And what they don't realize is that these differences and these, individual quirks and features are what draw them together and what make them have tremendously strong bonds. But they've never experienced that, right? Because they've always grown up in equality in a world where everything is the same. And so because of that, it destroys their ability to have creative thinking or different perspectives. When everybody looks at everything the same way, you look at their bakery, for example, right? The bread, it's just hard as a rock. It's like they're eating a brick because there's no creativity, there's no quality, there's no personal pizzazz in anything that they're doing. And it shows in everything that comes out of their lives, right? Because they don't have any collective work. It's all on an individual basis in a very bland and equal manner each and every single time, no matter what they do. Because again, they've given up their cutie marks and are all locked away in the middle of this place, in the middle of nowhere. So the leader, Starlight, basically just takes the main six and locks them in a house and says that she's not going to let them out until they give up their cutie marks and become equal, which is kind of bogus. And that's sort of where you see the episode taper off and go into part two. But what's cool about this situation, and probably the biggest thing to take away from this, is this idea that to the main six, these guys are crazy, right? And they're totally foreign. But to these guys, the main six are crazy, and the main six look totally foreign. And what you're basically looking at are a bunch of capitalists walking into a communist economy or a communist town where everything is equal and there is no individual rewards, no personal traits that actually turn them into special people. There's just no distinctions to make differences into specialties, right? And so it just crushes this idea of a collective economy based on individual strengths. Instead, it forces everybody to work on their weaknesses, work on what they don't like, work on what they're not passionate about, because they're just trapped being equal. They don't have a purpose. They don't have a mission. There's no overarching goal for any of these ponies because none of them have anything that separates them from one another. And so there's just a complete and total lack of ambition and specifically creative imagination, in the sense that they have no clue what they want to do with their lives. And they don't know how the main six stay happy with one another because they've never experienced anyone that's different from them. They've never experienced someone with a different point of view or a different idea or mindset or ideology that's come and challenged them and made them think and grow. They've always been in the same safe, similar environment that is just drastically cutting off their ability to grow, which is terrible stuff. So they got to kind of figure out how to get out of here, and that's the strat. And so as they're kind of sitting here, just wallowing away, all the all the books are just equal marks, equal signs, which is just ridiculous. And they make this decision that the only way they can get out of here is to actually convert, right? And so originally they're super freaked out because if they get rid of their cutie mark, it destroys their strengths and it just abolishes their magic for Twilight, but for all of them, right? Everything that makes them just gets washed away and is trapped, remember, in this bank of cutie marks, right? And it traps all the magic, traps all the energy, because it's just removing all of their life forces and sucking it away into an inanimate object, which is just insane, right? It's ridiculous. And so because of that, they're pretty messed up while they're in this room. And so they start to walk and they try to escape, right? But they I don't know why, but they can't really escape. There's spells and it stops the magic, and so they're sort of trapped because the whole town's surrounding them. And they are cult, right? Join our cult, join our following, join us, be part of our town. And then they have this whole song they do. It's just crazy. And so remember, Starlight, the leader, right? She, she's got her staff and she's removing the cutie marks. And one of them walks out and says, "Look, you know what? You can remove our cutie marks because they don't really see any other way to get out of there. They kind of get forced into it. And so they remove their cutie marks and they turn them all, into equal signs. And it just like drains their energy, crushes them. And then they leave them in this room to kind of adjust and transition. And so Starlight, as she removes the cutie mark, she's like using her horn, she's using the staff thing. But these kind of figure out, the main six, they realize that something's going on here. And so they do a little bit more investigating once they get out of here, and they realize, while they're spying on Starlight, through her bedroom window, that she spills a little bit of water on herself, right? And like she actually reveals that she has her cutie mark, and she just kind of like put some makeup over it and put an equal sign on it. So she's like making everyone in the town expunge their special traits, but she herself has not, made that transition and given it up. And she still has her magic, she still has her cutie mark, right? And so these guys, they take this information, they go public with it, and they let everyone know that, they're basically being led by a huge fraud. And that pisses everybody off a whole lot. And they realize by looking at the main six and how they've grown and how they've stayed together and how they are friends despite, their differences, despite not being completely equal, that maybe there is something to this whole, differences and friendship and overcoming things. And so they start to rally up, and they want to get their cutie marks back. And so what they do is they, get like a mass revolt started, and everyone at the middle of the night starts to like just march towards this mountain, and they all break in and they use like rocks and sticks to just smash this thing open, this case open, where all the cutie marks are, and everyone gets their cutie marks returned to themselves. And they all get the energy back, they get their powers back, they get their magic back, they get their special skills back, they get their character back. Because what makes them unique is what fuels their creativity, it's what fuels them to be themselves, it fuels them to grow and succeed and have happiness and joy in their lives. And as Starlight stripped that away from them, she fundamentally cut off what really made them them, which is just awful, terrible stuff. And the only way to get that back, the only way to be themselves again, was to have something that made them unique, that made them stand out, that made them them. So you want to make sure, like when you're looking at the social groups you're building, the people that you're around, you've got to be unique. You've got to be yourself. And you have to emphasize your strengths and emphasize what it is that you love to do, instead of trying to just be completely equal and be bland and do nothing. Because as soon as you do that, it just brings everything down to the bare bones minimum, to the core, and it absolutely crushes any interest or any specialties or nuances in any kind of relationship or social group, which is ridiculous, and it's a terrible situation to be in. So after these guys break in and let everything go, Starlight gets really upset because like they basically just destroyed her life's work, making like a whole town of equal people, which kind of sucks. And so what she does is what is just such a terrible thing to do. It's what so many dictators do. And it's like what you'll see people do when they have nothing left. Yet this alone is just the worst thing possible that you could possibly do. And she tries to use force, right? Remember we talked about this earlier, this idea of like, a drop of honey versus like tons and tons of force. She like tries to like kill everybody and take over and force them to be equal, and force them to join her town again, and force them into submission so that she can be the leader again and everyone will be equal. And you can kind of see like she's attacking everybody. It's just ridiculous. And so Twilight has to save them and then defeat her and use magic against her. And they have this huge fight. And it's just awful. We've got leader of what used to be all of the equal ponies, all the equal people that were all brainwashed by this dictator. Pony who's been leading all the specialized individuals, all of the uniqueness that is, reality, right? She's been representing the real world, and they have to clash and fight. And Twilight, she wins because she's like way stronger apparently. And she sits down with Starlight. She asks like, well, what the heck's going on? Why are you doing this? And it turns out that like very early on, when Starlight was a kid, she's playing with like her best friend, and her best friend, they were playing cards, and he was like levitating stuff and doing magic and getting books and stuff. And he gets his cutie mark like right in front of her, while he's using magic, and it's a magic cutie mark, right? And his parents come in immediately and like take him to magic school for the rest of his life, and she never sees him again. And she's devastated. The only friend she ever had was like ripped away from her claws and just taken away from her reach. And so this very early traumatic childhood experience led her to strip hundreds of their uniqueness and their skills and their cutie marks and their talents for the sole purpose of equality and trying to force friendship and connections with individuals. Because when she was young, she had this one traumatic event that changed everything for her. And so often, we look over that at the beginning, and we don't ask people what they're passionate about. We don't ask people where they're coming from. We don't ask them what their roots are. But in reality, if she just understood that at the beginning, it would have been so much more easy to explain the significance of friendship and the significance of trying out new friends, building new social groups, taking in new situations and new opportunities. And that's exactly what Twilight had to explain to Starlight, and how she was able, in the end, after beating her in the fight, to befriend her and take her on a journey for the next, rest of the show, basically, and learning more and more and more about friendship and how to really connect with individuals, not by forced rule, not by forced, connections or per se, equality, but kind of more importantly, by using and emphasizing individual differences so that there are significantly easier ways to build connections or relationships and masterminds by actually accentuating those differences and playing to the power of those differences instead of trying to force everyone to be the same, which is just bogus, right? So really, really cool stuff there. Woo! All right, so Castle, Sweet Castle. This one's fun. So we've got like this whole like brand new castle, right? And the problem is Twilight doesn't really feel at home in the castle because remember her like old home kind of just exploded like a couple episodes ago, and so she's in the throne room with everybody else, but they just don't know like exactly what to do to make it feel homey. And so because of that, Twilight and Spike ask the main six, the rest of the main six, to help them out and snazz it up. Can you guys make this a little bit better so that it's a little bit homier? And they say, sure, yeah, you bet, no problem. And they ask Twilight to just kind of walk away and leave for the rest of the day. So Twilight, she goes out, goes to spa, stuff like that, and goes with Spike all the way over here for the whole day. And these guys come in, and their goal, right, is to make this like the best place ever for Twilight. They want to make it a reminder of her roots and where she comes from, and more importantly, they want her to feel comfortable, right? And so because of that, all of a sudden they start to think, okay, well, what would be like the coolest thing ever? And instead of thinking of like Twilight's point of view and what Twilight would want, they look at it more in their own filter, right? Looking at what they would be comfortable with. And so because they aren't able to like generalize the other person and specifically like look through Twilight's eyes, they start to have some serious issues. So like Rainbow Dash brings in like posters of herself and just tons and tons of like Wonderbolts things and flags and crazy like racing things that like Twilight has no clue about, but she thinks she would like. And then each of the main six do this, right? Like they all go and they bring what they would think their own special thing would be, and it's different for each of them. But you see like Applejack brings in dirt and like farm animals and hay. Rarity brings in like tons of dresses and pictures and it's just, it gets so ridiculous in our hand. You see Pinkie Pie, she brings in like a portrait and just cakes and each of them, they're looking through their own eyes and they're acting completely independently, bringing in what they think, would make them feel at home, would make them happy. And it makes like just a ridiculously giant mess, like all over the place. It's just insane, right? And so because they make this huge mess, they realize that there's got to be a better way to do this. They need to look at the problem not on a one by one basis, but they need to come together and make something for Twilight, not for themselves, right? It's got to be a whole different way to look at this problem, a whole different way to look at their perspective, right? And so they take a step back and they realize that they've made a ginormous mess, like all over the place, and they need to really like connect with Twilight's passions, right? And so what they do is first they have to take everything down, right? So remember, they spent like all this time putting up everything that they thought they would like, and so they've got to get rid of like all of it, right? And so often, like, they didn't do any planning going into this project, right? And when you don't do any planning going into something, and then you do all this work to get to this point right here, and then you realize that like something is fundamentally wrong with the base that you built your building on, and it's like just super messed up. What sucks is like you have to destroy all the progress that you made, and it just falls away, flies away. Versus spending like 10% of your time at the beginning just planning it out and getting no progress done at the beginning, but simply just thinking and brainstorming and figuring out what's the best course of action to take. How should we get this done? And just a very, very condensed and productive period of time where you're totally filtering out the crap that doesn't matter, focusing exclusively on what does. And then the instant that that's done, and so you can go same growth path, right? Same amount of achievement, but this is the right achievement, and it has such a greater impact over time. It's more and more and more and more important because you don't make these mistakes, right? You don't go along the wrong path. You don't it's this one really great example, this image of it. It's this idea that like you've got two buildings and you need to get to the top of this building, right? And so you go to the fire station and you get the biggest ladder possible, and then you're so excited. You just got the hugest ladder like you've ever seen in your life, and you're like super pumped. And you launch it all up. It's like 50 stories high. It's humongous, and it's the biggest thing ever. And you're super excited about it. And then you start to climb it. And then you get to the top of the ladder, and you realize that you spent the last 4, 5, 6 hours climbing this huge ladder, getting it all set up. I mean, it's just a ton of effort and time. But your ladder has been leaning against the wrong building. She's just hardcore, ready to run a marathon. She runs straight through the finish line for the 5K, and then runs another like 10 or 15 miles. Well, nobody else is even like close to her, right? She just keeps going and going. And when she was running that initial 5K, she knew that this was just the beginning. And so to her, it was such a different game than what anyone else had been playing, because she had planned out, she spent the time, and she knew where she was going. And after she got through that first mile point, she said, great, awesome. And then she kept going, and ran another freaking, like, tons. And ran the whole marathon, right? Because it wasn't just a race, a 5K for her. It was more, so much more. And nobody else was on her level. And no one else was doing what she was doing, because nobody else put the time in at the beginning to plan out the distance that she traveled. So anyway, they get rid of all their individual things, and they come together as a group. They come together as a team, and they get like some of the old roots from the tree house that got blown up, and then they put a bunch of jewels and gems and pretty things on the roots. And after they do that, they hang it up in the ceiling, and then you can kind of see it in the picture. That's what it looks like. It's like this huge chandelier. And they present Twilight with this magnificent chandelier that reminds her of like all the memories that she used to have and where she came from, and it's like her roots, right? Basically, it's her roots, and so that was kind of what they gifted to her, and it had a huge impact on her, right? She was super happy about it, and it worked because they stepped back and they looked at what would she care about, and then what do we have like the skills to build as a team, and they had the skills to do this because they all worked together to dig it up and then decorate it, clean it, and all that great stuff, which is why they had huge success with it. So a lot of really cool stuff there, and we'll move on to the next one.
Let's all work together to make this castle shine. Once we add some sparkle, it'll feel divine. Crates of apples and bales of hay, some popinjays, so she won't be alone. And we'll make, and we'll make, and we'll make this castle a home. There's nothing like balloons and confetti to greet you every time you walk through the door. She'll need this and those posters of all my heroes. How could any pony awesome ever ask for more? And we'll make, and we'll make, and we'll make a home she'll adore. Bright curtains of flowing silk and lace. This picture of me winning a race. Party cannons to give her a surprise. Hose and rakes and some more garden supplies. Getting hugs from this nice big friendly bear. Decorate with some gemstones bright and rare. More of this and that, don't forget the party hats. How could any pony awesome ask for more than that? Let's all work together to show that we have shown Princess Twilight Sparkle. How we made, how we made, how we made this castle a home. How we made, how we made this castle a home. How we made, how we made this castle a home.
And so you can see with their individual inspiration, it's a pretty big mess all over the place because they just aren't able to look through another person's eyes. And so this is kind of where Twilight always kept coming back to. She was always coming back to this old tree house and her roots, right? And so that's where they got the inspiration to go and dig them up and then create the beautiful chandelier and give her inspiration that, you know, this is the best thing for her. This is the next step. And this is really going to be sort of like her whole life, right, is in this new castle. And it reminds her that her whole past is behind her up to this point, and it's now just up to her to keep pushing forward and to keep doing well.